Before we get into the index and match function in Excel, let's try and understand it a little bit better. So the first thing is, index and match is a referencing function. In some ways it is similar to VLOOKUP in that you can use it to cross-reference data. However, the difference with index and match is that it can perform a three-dimensional lookup, where VLOOKUP is a one-dimensional lookup. Now that sounds a bit confusing, so let's try and understand it a little bit better. So in this case here, just for the purposes of showing this to you, I'm going to highlight Belgium and I'm going to highlight, let's say, April. Now, if we take a look at this data set, I've highlighted Belgium and I've highlighted April. Each of those will require a reference. So Belgium and April. So that would be a one-dimensional, a two-dimensional. However, if I want to understand the data point where they intersect, we can see here in this example it's 56. Now I'm using dynamic data, so this 56 will change in a while. But essentially, this is what I mean by a VLOOKUP. I want to write a formula that can find Belgium, find April, and cross-reference to the cell that meets. So it's really finding the X, the Y-axis, and the intersection point between them. So that's essentially what a VLOOKUP does. So that's essentially what an index and match function will be doing. It is a three-dimensional lookup. Okay, let's get going and get into it. Okay. It is very important that we understand the structure in how we build an index and match. There are two match formulas required and one index. So it's almost a three-step process. You perform the match function and you always look into the down data first. So that will be my first match. I will then look across. That will be my second match. I will then use the two match formulas to feed into the index. So the structure of a VLOOKUP is match formula down the column A in this case, match formula across row 1 in this case, and then you use those two match formulas to feed into the index function. We're going to begin by doing the two match formulas. So my first match formula will be to check where Belgium is on the list. Now the match formula is essentially asking Excel the question, where is it? Where is the data positioned? And it will give you back a numerical reference. So if we take a look at this, from a list point of view, Belgium is 5 down from Spain. So I will be getting a 5 here. April is 4 across, so I should be getting a 4 here. So those will become the two coordinates I will be feeding into the index function. I'm now going to go about that using the match formula. So I start in K2 equals match. Now again, you don't have to type the formula. You can just type MAT in this case. I hit tab and the formula launches. You can type it manually as well. Now, like all formulas in Excel, they tend to be a little bit overly complicated and technical. So the parameters or the items we need to feed into it is the lookup value, the lookup array, and the match type. A far easier way of understanding that is to use simpler language, which I'm going to do here. So how I describe the match formula is the value I'm looking for, which is the lookup value. So the value I'm looking for is Belgium, comma, my lookup array is the data set I want to look in. So I select all of the countries, comma, and the last item here is match type. Now a really good important principle to remember is that a match formula should always end in comma 0. So the last thing you do in a match is you type in comma 0. As I'm going to do here, I close the bracket, voila, and we can see it gives me position 5. And it is dynamic, by the way. If I was to change that to Spain, we can see it goes to position 1. I'll move it back to Belgium, back to position 5. So I'm going to perform my second match formula now, which is going to try and find where is April positioned in the list. So once again, I go equals match. I'm going to type this one to be a little bit different. Open bracket, the value I wish to look up, April, comma, the data set. You're going to use a little shortcut here, Control Shift arrow right. And remember, a match formula always ends in 0. So there we go. And there's my second match. I hit enter. And likewise, it's dynamic and it's working. We're now going to go about feeding those two match formulas into the index formula, which is the next video. We have now built our two match formulas, as we can see, and we will be feeding these into the index formula. So let's remember the match formula is asking Excel, where is it? Where is it positioned? It gives us back a numerical reference. The index formula is asking Excel, what is it? What is the value 5 down and 4 across on the data set? So let's start our index. Equals index, open the bracket. We select the data set first. You can select manually like I'm doing here, but a really great shortcut to know in this case is Control Shift, arrow down, arrow right, and it'll select the entire data set for me. Comma. Now, in this example here, I've selected the data set and I now feed in the two match formulas. You always feed the down coordinate first, which is Belgium 5 here, comma, and then I will feed the April, the across coordinate. Very important, in an index, we never put a 0 at the end of it. In a match formula, we always put a 0 at the end of it. I close the bracket, and we'll now see that as I hit enter, the answer is 67. And if I look at my spreadsheet, we can see the value for Belgium April is 67. I'm just going to do this once again to make sure everyone's okay with this. So it's equals index, open the bracket, select your data set, comma, we click on the 5, the Belgium coordinate, comma, we click on the April coordinate 4. No need for a 0 at the end, so we close the bracket and we hit enter. And we just built a three-dimensional formula, a double match feeding into an index. We are now going to look at how to merge the formulas. So we're going to integrate the first match formula and the second match formula into the index formula. If we look closely, K2 refers to the first match and K4 refers to the second match formula. Essentially, I'm going to copy the formulas from the cells in K and drop the entire formula rather than just the cell reference in here. So let's take a look at how we do it. Now, when you're copying formulas, it's very important that you have a high level of concentration. When we copy and paste data, text for example, it's usually straightforward. Copying formulas is a little bit more precise. So I want you to look very carefully at my specific technique here. So I go into the match formula, I select everything except the equals. No matter how many formulas you have, you only ever have one equals. Control and C to copy. And instead of just clicking anywhere randomly, I press escape. You retreat back out of the formula. I come into the 90 and I'm now going to replace K2 with the actual formula. So I backspace and delete, backspace, deleting the text. And I now use the shortcut Control V to paste the match in. I press enter. The fact that there's no error appearing here now on the index and match indicates that it probably is working. The fact that there is no error showing here indicates that it is probably working perfectly. To make sure, I will delete the first match and we see the formula remains working. So we've now validated that we no longer need the first match formula. It's now integrated fully into the index. I'll do the same here with the April value. I select, Control C, copying everything except equals. I copy. I copy everything except the equals. Control and C, escape, back into the index, and I will now change K4, deleting K4, Control and V, enter, and there is a Rolls-Royce index and match. Once again, I'll delete this, and we'll now see that all the formulas are combined together, an index with a double match. That concludes the demonstration of the index and match formula. Thanks for watching.